Okay, so let's start by bursting one myth. What is one myth about women's pleasure that you would like to burst?
So most people think that sex equals penetration, right?
Okay.
Sex equals penetration. Erection, penetration, ejaculation. And it ends when he comes. And we assume that this must be what feels good for women too. But if the clitoral caressing that is so central to pleasure for most women was prioritized in the definition of sex, the way that penetration is, then, clitoral caressing would be called sex and penetration would be called post-play or something. The stuff that we think of as foreplay, whether it's fingering or oral sex or something, any sort of, if this is the vulva, where's my little vulva model? This is the vulva. This is the clitoris, right? Which is so central to women's pleasure. It's the most reliable route to pleasure for most women. But instead, sex is seen as penis and vagina, right? The vaginal canal is the opening from which menstrual blood exits or a baby exits or a penis could enter during penetration. But the clitoris, which is this often neglected little structure at the top, is actually super central to the experience of orgasm for women. So if you're ignoring this, if sex is just this, it would be, the equivalent for men would be like playing with the balls the whole time.
Okay, yeah.
And expecting them to feel great. I mean, it might feel okay, but imagine if I didn't know where the penis was, didn't even touch it. That's how, you know what I mean? That's how sex often ends up feeling for women because there's such an overemphasis on penetration. And the clitoral caressing that's often relegated to foreplay is optional. You know what I mean? But what if we spent an hour on clitoral caressing, whether with fingers, tongue, combination thereof, or with a vibrator while also experiencing penetration? Sex would be much more pleasurable for women, but most people just think what feels good for him should feel good for her. It's like an overemphasis on penetration. So I think broadening the definition of sex to include more than just penetration, knowing what the clitoris is one of those things that really can take women's pleasure a long way. Yeah.
And what are some of the things a man shouldn't do when it comes to women's pleasure?
What a man shouldn't do? How long would you like me to speak for?
Go.
I think that unfortunately, for a lot of people of all genders, there's a sense of shame and disgust associated with the vulva, okay?
What is the vulva?
Vulva, sorry. Okay, should we do a little anatomy lesson?
Yeah,
let's do a little anatomy lesson.
Anatomy,
so I have these two little models of the vulva, and I'll use them both because this one has a bit more precision, but it's smaller, so it's harder to see, and this is a bit bigger, so it's easier to see. Let's start with this. So the external genitals are the vulva.
Okay,
most people call this whole thing the vagina, but actually this is the vulva, and only the internal canal is the vagina.
Okay.
So the entire external region, which comprises of the clitoris, the outer lips, the inner lips, there's the small urethra over here, which is where urine comes out of. It's a separate opening. The vagina is a separate opening. The anus would be here. So there's sorry, that's the camera. So the clitoris, there would be the urethra where pee comes out of, the vagina where menstrual blood or exits, a baby would exit from, and a penis would go in during intercourse. These are the inner lips, the outer lips. This whole external thing is called the vulva, and only the internal canal is the vagina. But most people just casually refer to this whole thing as vagina, not realizing or never having been taught, right, the names of these other parts, the labia minora, labia majora, clitoris, whatever. It can be news to people even if they have this anatomy. So that's something I think we need to fix, because how can you talk about what feels good for you if you don't even have the words and you don't even know the parts?
I see.
So I think for a lot of women, it's so valuable to take a hand mirror and actually look at your own vulva, because unlike with a penis, it's not that easy to see, right? You kind of have to, when you're standing up, you can't really see what's going on. So you take a mirror, look at what's there, look at a diagram on the internet that's labeled if you want to help yourself match the parts, and then understand those parts, because whether in a health context or with a partner, how are you going to tell a doctor or partner or anyone what you need to know about down there if you yourself don't know? So I think first just familiarizing yourself with the parts. Then I think going one step further, because of course penetration can also feel pleasurable, and I'm going to use this model because the clitoris, which is like this little structure at the top, is not just this little structure. It actually extends internally. It's such a large structure. So this is just the head of the clitoris, but if you could see beneath, if you could take an X-ray or whatever, you would see that it straddles the vaginal canal. So it's sort of like, I hope this is not too complicated, but if you can see the clitoris here and the vagina here, and if I could remove this layer, what you'd see is that it sits on top of the urethra, which is where urine comes out of, and the vagina. And this is the clitoris straddling these parts.
Okay.
So often, there's this question of like, what is the G-spot? The mystery of the G-spot. Is it a structure? Is it not? Where do we find it? And so the G-spot is not actually some different physical bump or gland or button to look for, but rather this conglomeration of clitoris, urethra, vagina, all so close to each other creates a very sensitive zone. It's like an erogenous zone on the usually on the upper wall of the vagina that can feel really good to stimulate, especially if you're also receiving clitoral stimulation, which is why so many women love like, a tongue and finger combination. If you're like going down on her and fingering her at the same time, often that's very effective, especially if you're generous about it and really enjoy doing it and won't stop until she comes. Yes. So I think that many people don't know this stuff, and it can seem kind of complicated, but it's not so complicated. Think about it, right? Your urethra, vagina, clitoris, so many things, so sensitive, all at the same place. Of course, it's going to be like a lot of sensation when you stimulate this part. And because the clitoris is this entire structure, when you're stimulating the upper part and the inner parts together, and it's literally like packed with nerve endings and one of the central elements to women's pleasure, it can feel so good. So, but if you didn't even know about this and you're not starting here and you're just going straight, I think so often women aren't even sufficiently aroused when penetration begins, right? Often it's just like going from zero to penetration. Whereas I think to be relaxed and then to be aroused and then to have that build up and to also ensure there's sufficient lubrication and to acknowledge the fact that sex is not just physical but also a mental. The brain is the largest sexual organ. How do we engage all of this? How do we enter a state first that's conducive to pleasure, a state of relaxation and connection? And then how do we also make sure that the physiological elements that are central to women's pleasure are things we are doing rather than ignoring? I think, was that helpful?
No, it was very helpful. No, it is clear. But what I like is that, so the point, what you say is that, and was the myth, like, women's pleasure, it's not just about penetration. There's more to that, and then you explain there's more to that. So now we can go. We understand now the vagina. We can go into what men shouldn't do when it comes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't answer that question.
No, it's okay. We can go now. Yeah.
Okay.
We have time.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many things to talk about. So I think I was making this point about, because I think I was saying it and then we went into vulva anatomy.
Yeah.
So I was saying that there's this baggage that many people carry of all genders, that the vulva is disgusting. Okay, in the sense that both people who have vulvas as well as often people who are partners with people who have vulvas might think like that there's a kind of like fear of the unknown, as well as I think some sense of disgust around. It's been coded in disgust historically. Okay, like Shakespeare has referred to the vulva as like a fetid pit. There's such a. Why would you describe it as that? So I think we need to, first of all, think of the vulva as like a beautiful, wonderful, delicious, delightful place.
Nice.
It's not dirty and smelly. Yeah. It doesn't matter if there's hair there. Do you know what I mean? I think if both parties have a shower before having sex, really, it doesn't matter if either of you or both of you have hair, what it looks like. I think if you are able to have a nice shower together, anything beyond that is usually not going to be disgusting. Yeah. The body is the body. Your body cannot possibly smell of strawberries. But my skin after a shower just smells of nothing. Or like a little, I don't know, you'll have your own scent, but it's a pleasant one. You know what I mean? I think that overcoming the sense of disgust, I think most women feel like, oh my God, when with a lover are going to have thoughts like, do I taste okay? Do I smell okay? Do I look okay? Should I have had a bikini wax? I haven't had a bikini wax. I'm not going to let him do it. Like, how are you going to enjoy yourself if you're so worried that this part of you is like gross? Do you know what I mean? And then for men also to think that they're only going to be interested in even attempting to like participate in any of this if she's been waxed and shaved and because porn will create certain expectations and or whatever. Men are just entitled and receiving this conditioning, right? So I think unfortunately, there's a sense of like fear of the unknown and disgust around how the vagina has been presented historically in pop culture and porn, in literature, like in all kinds of places. And we need to, I think, instead look at alternative presentations of it, which also exist in mythology, in mysticism, in art and history, and even in some other forms of literature and stuff where like it's the site of creation. It's this magical thing. It's like a piece of the universe inside you. It's beautiful. It's juicy and wonderful and luscious and, you know, like a fruit or a flower, not a fetid pit. Do you know what I mean? Like, so choose how you're configuring these things. Why not think of it as something that is a privilege to explore? That's like this amazing secret garden, right? And so I think just rephrasing
described it.
Rephrasing these things. Even the penis, I feel like it's been configured as like this, masculinity. Oh, you know, like phallic. Everything phallic is, whether it's an obelisk or swords or whatever. Like penises have been equated with things that are violent and sharp. And, even the word vagina in Latin, it means a sheath into which a sword is put into, like the covering of a sword.
Really?
Yeah, can you imagine? Wow. So violent, this imagery is so violent.
Yeah.
And I think that if we even rethink the penis, instead of the soft penis is like one of the cutest, sweetest, gentlest, like most vulnerable, adorable things in the world. Oh my God. It's like so sweet. Why not think of the penis as like a sweet, lovable thing instead of like like this, and something that's like supposed to be wielded with violence, or like I feel like it's almost, when you look at even the titles of porn clips on mainstream porn sites, it'll almost seem like violating a woman's consent is arousing to some men.
Oh,
you know what I mean? When you look at how things are titled. And I think if we can reconfigure these things, the way we've been taught to think about each other's genitals and bodies and sexuality, why not have more wholesome and joyful and creative and compassionate and honest even paradigms within which to think about these things, instead of the rather limited and often damaging ones that we inherit. You know what I mean? Where shame and violence and things like that tend to be a big part of the way we see it.
And I really like, so the first thing what you said is about, there's a little bit of fear of the unknown, but it's also about having the information, the knowledge, right? And the second is how you see it, right? It can be seen as dirty, or you can see something very beautiful, as you say. I love the way you describe. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I talk so much. I feel like you said do short answers, but I was like, you can edit. You can edit.
Yeah. Okay, now for, let's say for men, what is one surprising thing that men can do that really, really, really helps women to have pleasure?
Okay, there's only one thing. Go down on her. But no, one thing. I think there's 2 or 3 things, okay?
Yeah.
I think firstly, a bridge activity between whatever the stresses of the day. You get home from work and, or maybe you guys have kids and maybe there's bills to pay and mother-in-law and father-in-law and all this stuff. I think going from that to intimacy requires a bridge activity, whether that's putting on some music and maybe just sitting together and cuddling, or having a nice hot shower together, or maybe going for a run together, or making a cup of tea, something to just exit that of daily life and enter this space where you feel present, not dissociating because you're still thinking of the stresses of the day, and you feel connected, and for a while it's just about the two of you. I think for me to enter that, and most women, I think even most men benefit from easing into a state of like being present and being ready to feel connected and to feel intimate rather than just rushing into it and doing the motions, you know. So I think bridge activities are like central in playing music and like little things, changing your environment, dimming the lights. I don't want to have sex with the tube lights on, you know.
Okay.
I think like, I want some light on, though it doesn't have to be pitch dark, but I think like setting the mood can go a long way instead of going from zero to like on top of her. And I think then making her feel like you are invested in her pleasure rather than the default setting, which is often like my pleasure is an obligation or too much to ask for, or I think I'm inconveniencing him. I think a lot of women worry because we've been socialized to believe that our pleasure is difficult and takes too long, and things probably don't smell so nice, and pubic hair is ugly, and all of this baggage makes it hard for women to feel entitled to pleasure. That's what I've been saying. You know, like I think so many women will not ask for what they want because of this combination of things, of fearing being judged, because you're not supposed to know about sex. Good girls shouldn't even know. How much experience have you had that you know what you like in bed?
Oh no!
Right? And am I inconveniencing him? He's gonna think he's gonna think I'm a slut, and I'm gonna take too long. So let's just do what he wants to do. This is for so many young women. Those are the types of things stopping you from being able to experience pleasure. So as a man, if you can do all you can to eliminate those things, make her understand that you genuinely love giving her pleasure and that you are not going to judge her, that there is no other place you'd rather be, that she is beautiful and amazing, and you want to learn from her what's going to make her have the best time possible tonight. I feel so few men are able to do that, you know? I think it's such a common experience for women, for example, to have a man push her head down because he expects to receive a blowjob. I don't know a single woman who pushes a man's head down. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think we need to respect each other's consent and understand that there's no pressure or expectation to do anything you don't want to ever for either party, and that the conditions of interaction should be such that no party feels unsafe saying they don't want to do something. I think if we can create that sort of environment, also it's so much more conducive to pleasure, because otherwise you're worried about whether you want to or not want to do something. How's that going to be received? Is that going to react? Is he or she going to react in this way that either feels like rejection or like anger or like, you know? Imagine if we didn't have any of that and we could just explore together. We're just playing. We're playing, and there's no pressure, and nobody has to do anything they don't want to do. I think just that, it sounds so basic, but just that is often not the sort of energy you feel in heterosexual sexual encounters, especially for you know, early on in your sexual experiences where you don't know yourself so well, or you don't know. A lot of young people, I think, have a sort of scary time, you know.
So what you say, the first one, make sure to separate like your life, your busy life from that moment. So create that
like
environment.
A bridge activity,
the bridge activity,
set the mood,
the transition, right? And then it's about creating a space of communication where both feel comfortable and they feel they can explore together, right? Without any shame or without any even limitations. Just pressure or that. That's what you say. These are the two things, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Wow, this is awesome. Give us one more tip.
One more thing. I mean, these practical tips, I would say, like, don't ignore the clitoris, you know, and you can use toys and lube. I mean, the reason I am such a huge advocate of toys and lubricant, a toy like this, I don't have any lubricant here, but can deliver pleasure in a way that's very difficult to do consistently and for a long period of time for a human being, right? It's technology that exists. Why not use it the way we very willingly use all sorts of other technology? If I want to make lemonade, I'm going to use a lemon squeezer instead of using my hands if I want to make 4 glasses of lemonade, right? It's just more efficient. Does it mean I didn't make the lemonade? No. The technology exists. Is it unnatural to use a lemon squeezer if I'm making lemonade? Like, who am I? What do I have to prove by squeezing all the lemons myself? So I feel like people unfortunately have, I think sometimes people can feel like, oh, I'm being replaced by a sex toy, or like, oh, if my girlfriend uses a vibrator, am I not good enough or something? But it's not like that. And toys exist for men also. And just like you have an iPad there, why don't you have a notebook? Or like, why aren't you remembering it?
Yeah,
Why aren't you
yeah,
just
yeah.
remembering it? Does this make you less good a podcast host if you have some notes? No, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
technology.
yeah.
It can make you a better podcast host because you can remember 50 things and like maybe use this for some other purposes I'm not even aware of what you're using it for. We use technology to make our lives more efficient, to make things done better, etc., etc. And so I think somehow people have this idea that, oh, adding toys to the bedroom would somehow be like either we aren't sufficient for our partner or then they'll get used to that. And I don't know why there's like a competitiveness between toy or partner. Whereas it's like, come on, how can you compare a human to any device, right? That's a very unfair comparison to make. And I don't think a device can compete. An accountant is not going to be threatened by a calculator.
I see.
Right? He's going to have a calculator. Even with AI, it typically works much better if the quality of your prompt is really, really good. So if you're a lazy human who doesn't use their brain or any of their skills, then yeah, maybe you're going to... What are you even doing? But if you're a competent and compassionate and loving and wonderful person, there's no chance a device can replace you. But you can use it. And so I think, again, with sex being more pleasurable for women, toys and lubricant, because so often discomfort or pain during sex for women is the result of a lack of lubrication and excessive friction. And even if you get wet, and this idea that lubricant is only for old people, or like if you have some problem, no. There's some parts of the body that don't produce lubrication. Your hand is not going to produce lubrication. So if you're giving someone a hand job or fingering them, you're probably using saliva already. Lubricant doesn't dry up as quickly. You can have more of it, and it's going to make those activities feel better. Even for penetration, if you have an AC or fan on, even if you're very proficient with producing your natural lubrication, it can still benefit from having additional wetness. And a lubricant provides that so effectively. Lube is just like the unsung hero of better sex for everyone. Even solo pleasure for a man with his hand is going to feel nicer with a lube. So, or toys or whatever it is. Like lube just makes sex better. I don't know why anyone would not want to try that. Try it. It's great. It doesn't mean you're not wet enough or you're not, And toys and lubes tend to make sex much more pleasurable and gender equal, I think. So that's also a very, very easy way to maybe try something new and enhance pleasure.
Yeah, and also about what you say about exploring, right? Exploring more. So there's additional stuff that we can use, like lube, and also sex toys that can enhance the experience. That's what you can say. People shouldn't be concerned if it's going to replace or not. It's just going to help with the overall experience.
Yeah,
right?
and teach you about yourself.
Yeah.
You learn about your own pleasure by exploring.
Yeah,
so I think that's so fulfilling. Sometimes you don't even know that you don't know. Like for me, I think sexuality is such a journey of self-discovery, and it's like the learning is ongoing and infinite.
Yeah. I see.
It's not a finite, fixed thing. I feel like I'm surprising myself all the time with my desires or what feels good, and things can evolve and change. Like your internal makeup, your emotional state, all of these things impact like the hormonal cycle of the month, the hormonal cycle for as a woman, if your life as well. Am I 20 or 30 or 40? Different things are going on in my body, and I'm going to experience my sexuality differently. You know what I mean? It's not a fixed thing that I want exactly what I wanted when I was 20. So I feel like when you are open to, when you remember that in your head, that like you can learn something new about yourself in bed every day.
I see.
Then it can stay much more interesting instead of getting stuck in a rut, which I think a lot of couples who've been in a very long relationship or in marriages, there's this cliche of like the sex becomes less, people start having less sex and also it becomes less exciting or something, right? Because I think people kind of stop playing and stop learning. Kind of think like, now this is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so what is your advice for couples that get into that situation, that sex is something more like just more as a routine, but they lost that play, that exploration? What's your advice?
I think that you're thinking of that, of like keeping in mind that sex can be something that you all continue to learn about for your whole life. So one, just like an attitude shift. But I also think often in long-term relationships, and Esther Perel talks about this so effectively, right? These opposite forces that are at work, where, you know, in so many ways, desire is fed by novelty and excitement and risk and not knowing whether or not this person actually likes you back, all of this stuff. And then, like, you know, love and long-term, that security that comes with a long-term partnership also has a lot of pros, right? But sometimes feelings of stability and sort of like safety, a feeling of home, it can be less sexy, right? But you don't want to be in this fight or flight, does he like me mode for all your life. So I think how can you, within your safe and secure and wholesome environment, retain an element of that feeling of excitement and novelty? It takes effort, right? Like, are you guys going on holiday together sometimes? Do you make time for a dinner date every week? Do you sometimes put away your phone and only focus on each other for 2 hours? You know, so often married couples go to bed facing opposite sides, looking at their phone. I mean, today the phone, I think, is like one of the biggest encroachers on our ability to be present in any circumstance, including sex, including relationships, whatever it is. So I think that maybe you're lucky if in a courtship phase, when you're trying to woo someone, they don't look at their phone while they're talking to you. Even that's not guaranteed. But now you have this person, you're married, they're here every day for the next 10, 20 years. So many people are like on the TV or on their phone from the time they get back to work to the time they fall asleep. Where are you connecting? Why would you people want to have sex? You know, and also if there's different issues, I think, like resentment over the division of the household chores. If I feel like I have to do all the chores all the time and you just come home and watch TV, I'm going to resent you for that and not want to sleep with you, you know? Or if you're rude to me, or if I'm rude to you, or whatever. I think there's so many aspects of also the non-sexual relationship that will impact whether or not we feel like having sex.
Exactly.
So are we attending to all of that, or has resentment been building slowly like barnacles on the bottom of a boat for the last 8 years? You know what I mean? Or 10 years, or whatever it is. I think so often in marriages, resentment just builds and builds because we don't address things. This is little, but it daily pile up of just like that feeling undervalued, or feeling snubbed, or feeling disregarded, or feeling whatever, little, you know? And I think so, communication, being cognizant of these things, apologizing easily, making time for each other, going out on dates, even if you've been together 20 years, as opposed to like, otherwise you kind of take each other for granted a bit, and that's not sexy.
So what I like is you said first it's about the mindset. It's about believing that there can be always something new, something to discover about myself and about my partner. And then it's always about finding ways to play and to explore more, right? And the third, what you said, is also about not allowing that the problems of the relationship, they keep increasing with lack of communication or addressing that. That's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So good. We covered a lot.
Okay, good. I'm sorry I talked so much. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No. It's good. You know what I think what's something which is like also very mystical that I would like, especially for men to understand, is about the women's orgasm. What is one thing that men need to know about women's orgasm?
Okay, so why don't I show you
Yes.
now both my little sculptures. Here's a penis.
Yes.
This is circumcised. And this is a vulva.
You like to go to see the details, yeah? You go to
No, I mean, because I was going to make a point about how actually the penis and the clitoris are very similar. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna remove the clitoris, the internal clitoris from the vulva, but basically the clitoris has a little hood.
Yeah.
And similarly, if this were not circumcised, the penis would also have. I was going to make start with saying. So the penis and the clitoris are very similar. They originate from the same tissue when a fetus is developing. And they both have a head and a shaft. This is the and the clitoris is under a little clitoral hood, the penis has a foreskin. They both become engorged with blood when erect. So clitorises also have little erections, just like a penis becomes engorged with blood, not just when aroused, but even like in the morning wood.
Yeah.
Women get that too.
Oh, okay.
It's like morning dew. So just like penises can even get morning erections, even clitorises do, morning wood, morning dew. We don't think, like people don't talk about this stuff, but actually women's anatomy and pleasure is not that different when you start to think of it this way, of penis and clitoris as sort of equivalents, right? And so now imagine if women did not know what or where the penis was. What would sex feel like for you? So many men do not really know what or where the clitoris is. And therefore, sex is often not sufficiently pleasurable for women because it's kind of like the key to it's. Imagine if we ignored the head of the penis, like didn't know where the head of the penis was. Optional to touch it. I said this a bit earlier, but really, like I want to drive home this point because that is how sex is for so many women. And a lot of the other sorts of stimulation, whether it's penetration or whether it's some sort of like anal play or whether it's whatever, breast play, anything, is going to feel better if there was first clitoral stimulation or if it is simultaneous with clitoral stimulation. And that's why I so recommend a clitoral vibrator, because whether you're having doggy style or whether you're playing with her breasts or whatever it is, the clitoris is like this sort of like treasure trove that enhances and is enhanced by other sorts of pleasing sensory stimulation. Kind of like it's probably going to feel nice if you're kissing a man and stroking the head of his penis, right? Or if you're stroking the head of the penis or the whole penis even is going to probably make all kinds of other affection feel even nicer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that if a man just remembers this and figures out the clitoris and does not ignore it, it can go a long way in enhancing all the other things that might be done for pleasure and is also enhanced by all the other things. So I'm not saying only the clitoris, like do all these other cool things also, but don't ignore the clitoris because the body is this like amazing holistic thing where it's funny, but when you I think there's, how do I say this? Okay, so I would say clitoral stimulation is necessary and sufficient for orgasm for most women. Penetration alone is neither necessary nor sufficient for orgasm for most women. Clitoral stimulation combined with penetration, though,
I see.
can be even more fun than clitoral stimulation by itself. However, penetration without clitoral stimulation is often neither necessary nor sufficient, is what I was saying.
Yeah.
And of course, all women are different, and the only expert on how pleasure is going to be that woman. You should ask them. Don't ask me about your girlfriend's pleasure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's some basic factual information that is great to start with, so then you are able to have some sort of ground zero that you're beginning your explorations together with, but then talk, right? Like what works for you and her are going to be so specific to the two of you.
Yeah, and what you're saying is clitoris. So what you're saying is to clitoris stimulation before and during. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep the clitoris part of it.
Okay.
The party starts and should remain always. It is the VIP guest at your party. Okay.
Okay. I think people are not going to forget that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if a woman comes to you and just says like, I'm not able to have an orgasm, and also it's difficult to communicate with my partner, what would you say to them?
Look, I think that there can be various reasons for difficulty having orgasm, and there are some more sort of like either psychological or physiological health conditions that might be better addressed with a gynecologist or a therapist or both, such as vaginismus, which is when penetration becomes so painful it's almost impossible, and it often has to do with a sort of fear or, it could be an injury, experience of sexual trauma, all kinds of things like that, which create involuntary spasms of the pelvic floor such that your body does not allow for penetration. Things like that might make it very difficult to orgasm. I mean, anorgasmia as a condition clinical term for difficulty having orgasm, and even some men might have difficulty experiencing orgasm. Less common, but also possible. But these are like these statistically less frequent, right?
Yeah.
Where it's a medical condition. Often, a woman who's never had an orgasm has never had an orgasm not because she's dealing with a very sort of specific or severe medical condition. It's because there's a lack of information. She doesn't know what's going to get her there, and neither does her partner. Or maybe she knows what's going to get her there, but she can't tell her partner.
Okay,
Often a lot of women only orgasm when they masturbate, because then they do it the way they want to, but they haven't felt confident enough to tell their partner that what they're doing is not working and this is how they want it done.
Exactly.
You know? So I think that for the vast majority of women for whom I have never had an orgasm is not because they have a serious medical issue. It's because the orgasm, women's sexuality is stigmatized, and haven't been able to have these conversations, or haven't masturbated, or maybe masturbate but can't talk to their partner. It's like a easily solvable problem. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Easily solvable problem. And I think that many, many, many women have experienced pleasure on their own, or at least the glimpse of it. Like in India, we all joke, though every woman's secret is like, you know, in the bathroom we have the like health faucet, the little hand spray, jet spray, high pressure water. Most women will have experienced the pleasurable feeling of that against the clitoris. Like it's your first sex toy. You know, it's like the shower head is like a running joke, and every woman thinks it's only her who's ever tried that, but actually every woman has tried and enjoyed that. Such a funny thing. But so women know, I think, or have had the hints of the fact that certain things feel really pleasing for them, but it's hard to replicate that during sex because there's overemphasis on penetration. So I think like when someone has never had an orgasm, the first thing I would say is explore on your own, because when you don't know, it's that much harder to tell a partner what to do. So first figure it out on your own, and sex toys are they are literally designed for this.
It makes me think about, now there's a study in the US, they interviewed 52,000 people, and 95% of the heterosexual men, they experience an orgasm every time they have sexual intercourse. Then 86% of lesbians, they experience also the same. But only 65% of heterosexual women, they experience an orgasm, and that's what you're saying. There's a gap.
Orgasm gap,
Exactly. There's an orgasm there, and what you're saying is there's a lack of knowledge about themselves, but also lack of communication, right?
Exactly.
In the relationship. Actually, there's an experience. There's a friend of a friend that has a cousin. No, just joking. It's my experience. People normally like to say that, but I can share. I think for me, it's always. I feel like women's bodies are different, and I think every woman experience orgasms in different ways.
Everyone's body is different,
exactly,
right? Like even men.
Yeah, but so for me, it's always about, as a man, trying to understand how a woman is more likely to have an orgasm and to give that, because women's bodies are different. So for me, that's what has worked about communication, open communication, and knowing how does it work on the other side.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Ultimately, you and your partner are the only experts on the pleasure you share together, right? You can't expect that the same thing is going to work for every single person.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think it's so valuable for people to communicate, and communicate with abandon, like not have any fear of I'm going to be judged if I say I like this, or and no expectation either.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people really struggle with. It's like, what are they going to think if I tell them this is what turns me on?
Yeah.
Or like now they've told me this, so I have to do it. It shouldn't be either of these things, right? Like why can't we just talk?
Yeah, and I like that's the work that you are doing. Just also telling to people that it's okay to have desires, and it's okay to explore, right? But the most important is the communication between in the relationship. But you're talking about self pleasure. Like what is the impact, let's say, for a woman's health to practice self-pleasure?
So, orgasms are really good for health. Like doctors will say that. I'm not making this up.
Okay.
In general, sexual activity, positive and pleasurable sexual activity has many health benefits: improved mood, improved sleep, better circulation, like exercise. Or, I think of masturbation as such a wonderful tool because you don't need anyone else, right? So it's the safest form of experiencing sexual activity, minus the risks of any kind of infection or pregnancy or even rejection. It's also something that you can use almost like a self-soothing behavior, right? It's like it's something you have that you can regulate your own desires with. Maybe, I think so often I think, and no judgment here at all, but I think that often we might seek out somebody from a place of loneliness and horniness. Like, it's Saturday night, let's get on the apps, which is fine, absolutely fine. I'm not judging this at all, but I think if you're seeking a partner, often you're seeking from a place of greater clarity if it's not coming from needing to scratch an itch. Do you know what I mean?
No, what do you mean?
Like, I think that when you're lonely or like craving some sort of sexual contact, often your judgment is clouded a little bit, where you will put up with I think it results in different things for men and women, but often men will sort of use women, right? This is a cliche, I guess. Sex can, especially this is, I think, in an environment where you're young and still figuring things out and you have more time and stuff like this. Maybe you go on a date on Saturday night because you're bored and lonely and horny. You don't actually care about this person. And so it's almost like you're using a person. And men will often do this. Women report often feeling like a vessel into which a man masturbated. Does that make sense?
Okay.
If you're going, and this is, the sort of dating culture that a technology-driven app sort of, how different is it to find a match on a dating app than it is to buy socks on Amazon? It's not that different, right? We are literally commodifying each other, which I'm not judging. Each to their own, casual sex is okay, but I think many people often find it not so fulfilling. But I think that masturbation is such a wonderful tool, and it's in your toolkit. Use it because it's like a self-sufficiency. You don't need somebody just to scratch an itch. You can do so very effectively yourself. So then, why not you? I think that allows for you to seek in your relationships in your sexual and romantic relationships, something a little bit deeper also, where I think that even sex is enriched when you can genuinely be vulnerable together, when you can make eye contact, when you have some connection. I'm not saying it has to be love and marriage and all of this. It can even be casual. Yeah. But I think like acknowledging each other's humanity in our sexual interactions instead of using people just because you're horny, I think results in, like, just masturbate when you're horny, get a sex toy, and engage with each other's humanity. You know what I'm saying? When you're actually dealing with a human. I think that there can be a bit of confusion there often, where we now just... Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there's physical benefits and emotional benefits of masturbation, but also there's a second one that you say, which is sometimes like if people have needs, rather than just go for on a date just to have sex, you can also explore masturbation and then you are happy, then you can also go, but not from that place of need that I need, right?
Exactly. I think so.
And is there anything such thing as too much masturbation or too less masturbation?
No, I think that look, any activity that's interfering with your daily life, if you feel a compulsive, if you feel that you are no longer in control over how much you do something, maybe you should do less of it. Like, I think many people feel that way about social media even, right? Like their phone is controlling them. But with masturbation and anything physical, it's much harder for that. Can you be addicted to dancing? Probably not, because you're going to be really tired. How much can you dance every day? 1 hour, 2 hours? I don't know anyone who dances for more than 2 hours a day, and most people don't even dance for 2 hours a day. They maybe will dance for 20 minutes once a week.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Masturbation is like dancing or swimming. Very hard to do too much of. How are you going to do too much of it? You're going to just be tired. You don't even have the time. So most people don't masturbate more than maybe once a day at max. I don't know. Some people once a week, once a month. Is that too much or too little? No. It's up to you. Some people might not masturbate for 6 months. Some people might like to masturbate twice a day. Whatever. As long as it's not interfering with your life and your ability to fulfill your commitments, there is no such thing as too much or too little, because it's really up to you to determine.
Wow, I think we covered so much. I think we understood some of the myths. We understood how to give pleasure to a woman. We understood the orgasm. We understood better about the masturbation. Wow, it was beautiful conversation that we had. I think now just coming to the end, maybe I would like just to ask a question about you, in the sense of like, what would be one advice that you would love, that you would have when you were younger, about women pleasure?
I feel. I think that when I was younger, and actually still struggle with. Let me say that again. As a young woman, I often felt like I had to apologize all the time for everything. Like, being apologetic is the rent you owe the world as a woman. You know, I'm sorry my boobs are too small. I'm sorry I have my period. I'm sorry I didn't wax. I'm sorry it's taking so long for me to come. I'm sorry for existing. You know, I feel like that's so much of the psychology of how femininity has been configured. Like, you must be, just please others, smile, make the other people comfortable, cook. You sit with your legs crossed, you know, don't laugh loudly, don't have fun, don't rest, don't, like, this idea of the woman as the martyr, as the person who must look after everybody else's needs before hers. You see your mums and your, you know, like that, those types of women figures, even the Virgin Mary, whatever, these ideas of the sacrificing woman who just gives her whole self to others. And I think, like, it takes a lot of unlearning to configure your femininity differently. I would have told my younger self that I don't owe anyone an apology for anything, really, especially if I haven't actually done anything wrong. Only apologize when you've actually done something wrong. Oh my gosh, I constantly over-apologize. Learn how to say no. Learn how to say no. You do not have to do things you don't want to. It is absolutely and well within your... Learn to say no, and honestly. And not just in the bedroom, at work, with your own family even sometimes, or in all kinds of contexts. I'm not saying this is only sexual. I think this is just general conditioning, that the woman must operate in society as somebody who puts others' needs before her own, whether that's at home, at work, in any context, you know. So I would say, yeah, don't say sorry so much. Learn to say no more, and say off when you need to, and have fun.
Well, I'm so happy that we had this conversation. We covered a lot, but I think this is a topic that personally I think it's important to bring more awareness and more information. And to be honest, not just in India, but also outside in India. So I'm very happy about the work that you are doing, and I'm very happy to amplify your voice.
Thank you so much, and thank you for doing what you do.